I submit to you the evidence in this case proves that the defendant, Frank Sacco, killed Robert Meloni by taking a pistol and shooting Mr. Meloni in the head.
Mr. Sacco came to this court, and you all agreed that in your eyes he was presumed to be innocent, until it's removed by evidence convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt.
At the Orange County Courthouse in the state of New York, Frank Sacco is on trial for murder.
Frank Sacco is a man well known to both state and federal law enforcement.
Prosecutor George Bradlaugh of the New York State Organized Crime Task Force.
He's got a criminal record that goes back to the 1940s. He's very clever, very bright, very aggressive, very able, and very dangerous.
He has been a bad boy, you could conclude, which is one reason that I can't call him to the witness stand to deny these accusations.
Frank Sacco hired attorney F.Lee.Bailey to defend him against the charge of murder.
There's absolutely nothing that could legally connect Frank Sacco to this murder.
Sacco is accused of murdering Robert Meloni, the man he hired to manage this landfill in Tuxedo, New York. But Meloni wasn't the only victim in a crime saga that caused a lot of trouble for Frank Sacco and for Tuxedo.
It's a family business. John, my son-in-law, and I do most of the cooking.
Frank Mohn owns the Duck Cedar Inn across the street from the dump.
It was a very busy place. We did a lot of banquets, and then they started a dump across the street. Within a month or two of the dump starting, we started to get this odor. By the middle of the summer, the odor was fierce. You smell battery acid, like battery acid. There was a smell like rotten eggs.
How much money did you lose, do you think?
We've proven where we've lost $3 million.
This was the landfill 3 years ago. State officials suspect that it was a dumping ground for cocktail waste, toxic waste, that is mixed in and disguised with construction debris, a process that is very illegal and very profitable.
The fellow whose property it was a fellow named Ray Barone. Ray was one of my best customers.
Also the town justice.
He was also
He was
the
the
town,
judge.
He was the town justice. Mr. Sacco used to come here with Mr. Barone. I also seen the police chief having lunch with Mr. Sacco 3 or 4 times. And I heard Sacco say, hell, I'm paying people I'm not even supposed to be paying.
In fact, Sacco was paying Justice Barone $4,500 a week.
Did you bribe the town justice up in the Tuxedo, New York?
No, it was not a bribe.
What would you call it?
It was a payment for renting his property to dump.
Barone was later convicted of perjury and tax evasion and sent to prison.
Did you pay the police chief any money?
Yes, I did.
Sacco paid police chief San Matola $500 a week.
I paid him for traffic controlling and to make sure there was no problems on the property.
Some people might interpret that as a bribe.
Bribe for what? What could he do
Some
for
people
me?
might interpret it as a bribe.
There was no bribe.
To give a law enforcement official money?
I didn't think it was.
Matola pleaded guilty to perjury and tax evasion and was sent to prison.
What'd you pay her money for?
I paid her $500 a week to become a consultant.
Sacco also bribed an inspector with the State Department of Environmental Conservation, Sandra White.
While you were paying her, was she in charge of inspecting your dump site?
Yes, she was, and so were other inspectors also.
But they're on your payroll?
Just Sandra White.
Just Sandra White?
Yes.
Do you think,
At that
do you
time.
see anything wrong with that?
No, well, there may be a conflict of interest, but there was nothing illegal concerning it.
Wrong. In 1989, Sandra White pleaded guilty to tax evasion, and Frank Sacco pleaded guilty to federal racketeering and parole violations. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison.
We used to get out of here, you know, with parties and stuff, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There'd be trucks over on the face of the dump, dumping stuff. And nothing comes in the middle of the night that's good.
Were you suspicious?
Of course I was suspicious. It wasn't just Mr. Barone trying to fill up a dump. He introduced his friend to me or to my wife anyhow, as a connected man. This is a real hard-nosed guy, somebody you should really know. He's really hard-nosed. He's telling me that this guy's in the mafia.
My Tuxedo site should be given an Academy Award
You gotta
For the
be
way it
kidding.
looks. I'm not kidding you. You should have seen it before, and go look at it now.
But the people in the town were complaining all alone, and everybody was afraid.
Afraid of what?
Afraid to do anything because they thought you were connected to organized crime.
I can't help what they think. I'm sorry. That's your newspapers today. That's what happens. That's your television.
It's not Frank Sacco.
No, it isn't. And I defy anybody to associate me with members of organized crime.
I think there have been published reports saying that he's suspected of being connected with organized crime and so forth and so on. But I can tell you as an insider that the people who are organized crime say, we never heard of Frank Sacco.
I mean, he at least had this town justice convinced
Well,
that he was connected.
I don't think it would be beyond Frank to let you think that he was a connected person. He certainly enjoyed having the skids greased occasionally, whether it be with the maitre d' or in some other place. But I don't think it takes any connections with organized crime to bribe local officials. I mean, that goes on every day of the week.
Our investigation establishes that he's not a made member of any organized crime family. Organized crime doesn't just mean Cosa Nostra. It's a kind of criminal activity, and in that sense, certainly Frank Sacco is a good example of that, and I believe his convictions prove that.
How much money did you make on your dump in Tuxedo?
Oh, $3 to $4 million.
For a 5-month period of time?
Close to that, yes.
But now Frank Sacco may be the one who pays a heavy price. George Bradlaugh wants to put him away for good.
I submit to you that as conditions came about, it turned out to be the perfect night for Frank Sacco to commit murder.
You are not here to play Perry Mason, and I'm not here to solve this case. I don't know who killed Bob Meloni, but on this evidence, it certainly wasn't Frank Sacco.
Gentlemen of the jury, have you agreed upon the verdict?
Yes, we have.
The people of the state of New York versus Frank Sacco. How do you find? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The Tuxedo dump was closed down by the state of New York in October 1987. It's now on the state's Superfund list as a hazard to the public health and to the environment.
What happened to this town?
Somebody came to town who was willing to pay to break the law, and those people who could have enforced the laws, right, took his money. I guess it's just greed.